They said computers would make dozers smarter, but in the 1990s, raw steel proved them wrong. In Greek quarries and Middle Eastern deserts, machines like the PR764 and D9R barked through stone and searing heat, surviving 20,000 hours and furnace shifts of 122 degrees Fahrenheit without a digital sensor in sight. These machines were not just strong for their time, they eclipsed the future. So why do these mechanical titans keep outworking modern giants? And what did operators know that software still cannot match? The answer begins where endurance was measured in scarred metal, not error codes. Liebherr's PR764 didn't roar onto the scene. It arrived with the quiet confidence of German engineering, built for precision where brute force alone couldn't win. Rated at 300 to 340 horsepower, weighing in at just over 80,000 pounds, this was a dozer that didn't need to shout to prove its strength. Operators in Greek and Italian quarries learned to trust the hydrostatic transmission, a system that delivered seamless power and infinite speed control. Instead of lurching from gear to gear, the PR764 glided, each movement dialed in by fingertip, every load balanced perfectly. Hydrostatic drive meant less shock, less wear, and more control on tight quarry benches. Mechanics tracked overhaul intervals on the original hydraulic pumps. Some units are still running after 20,000 hours without a single major repair. One foreman in Thessaly kept a logbook that recorded 27,000 hours with the original pump and no leaks. He called it the smoothest, quietest workhorse I've ever run. Endurance. Cab comfort matched the mechanical finesse. Liebherr's ergonomic seats, panoramic glass, and low vibration mounts let operators finish 12-hour shifts with energy to spare. In a world where most American and Japanese machines barked and rattled, the PR764 hummed along, outlasting rivals in the slow grind of stone and dust. Smooth. Yet its Achilles heel was the parts network. In Alaska or Wyoming, when a hydrostatic valve finally wore out, help was a continent away. But in Europe's hardest pits, these dozers still clock hours today. Proof that small, smart design can mean big reliability. Still running, still smooth, still too strong for their time. The Caterpillar D9R was not built for comfort. It was built to survive. In the late 1990s, fleets of these machines landed in the Persian Gulf, where summer temperatures hammered 122 degrees Fahrenheit by noon. Contractors needed a dozer that would not blink, even when the air shimmered with heat and the ground threatened to cook a transmission. The D9R delivered every shift. Its Cat 3408C diesel, rated at 405 net horsepower, barked through the dust, feeding power to a frame weighing over 105,000 pounds. Operators trusted the oversized radiators and the raw, belt-driven cooling fans that kept water temperatures steady when electronics in rival machines wilted. One Gulf project lead, Ahmed Al-Saadi, kept a service log and recorded that they ran D9Rs 12 hours straight, rippers down, with no overheating. Others shut down. These just kept grumbling along. Mechanical controls defined the D9R. No computer screens, no digital lockouts, just hydraulic levers that let you feel every rock and vein of limestone through your palm. In the heat of the Saudi desert or the limestone beds outside Abu Dhabi, operators could fix a blown hose or swap a pump with nothing more than a wrench and a strong back. That is why these dozers became the backbone of infrastructure projects from the United Arab Emirates to Israel, where armored D9Rs pulled double duty for the Israeli Defense Forces. 25 years later, those same 1997 D9Rs are still out there, some on their third or fourth engine, others running original components, all refusing to quit. Mechanical muscle, field repairable, and still running today. Montana in the 1990s saw contractors betting on power per dollar, not just badge prestige. The dresser Komatsu TD40 stepped into that market with 500 to 520 horsepower Cummins diesel, pushing 147,000 pounds of American steel. Where KT and Komatsu demanded top dollar, the TD40 offered raw muscle at a price that left room in the budget for another pickup or a spare welder. Operators who ran coal in Wyoming or stripped overburden in Montana remember the torque curve, steady grunt at low RPM, outpushing machines with 100 more advertised horses. One contractor, running 3 TD40s, kept them alive with nothing more than a stick welder and a pile of steel plate. When a track frame cracked, it was off with the guards, out with the torch, and back to work by sundown. No dealer tech, no computer diagnostics. The electronics were minimal, the controls pure mechanical, and every component was built for wrench-in-hand survival. Field repairs meant downtime was measured in hours, not days. That price advantage, reportedly 25 to 30% below a new D10 or D11, let smaller outfits compete with the big boys. In South America and Africa, these machines still run, rebuilt again and again, because the TD40 was built for the long haul, not the showroom floor. Still running today. If you have a TD40 story or a field fix that saved your shift, drop it in the comments below. January on Alaska's North Slope, the wind knifed through every seam, and the mercury sat at minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. In that cold steel contracts, and even the best machines complain. But the D10N, all 60 tons and 520 horsepower of it, kept working until a transmission seal finally let go mid-shift. Mechanics did not wait for a shop truck or a warm bay. They dragged out torches, tarps, and a battered toolbox, fighting frostbite as they tore into the belly of the dozer right on the frozen pad. The Cat 3412's torque rise, legendary for shoving through clay that would snap smaller machines, meant every bolt was holding back a beast. 2 days later, with hoses thawed by campfire heat and oil thick as syrup, the D10N fired back up, idled rough, then roared steady, blade down, and pushing again before sunrise. One mechanic, hands cracked and black with grease, grinned through a beard of ice and said, "You can rebuild a D10N in the field with a wrench and a will. Try that on anything with a computer." That machine finished the winter without another major stop, clocking hours past 30,000 before anyone thought about a full overhaul. It is the kind of story you hear in every Arctic camp, the D10N refusing to die, rebuilt with nothing but grit and basic tools. Still running, still too strong for its own era. Fiat Allis built the HD41B with a mission. Spread 68 tons of steel across the ground, so evenly that nothing wore out before its time. The secret was the 7-roller track frame, each roller spaced to carry brutal loads without flex or hot spots, distributing the weight of the 524 horsepower Cummins VT1710 V12 over 32-inch shoes. In Brazilian copper mines, where summer heat and red mud chewed through lesser machines, the HD41B kept rolling. Foreman João Pereira, who ran a fleet outside Belo Horizonte, kept his own maintenance log, roller swaps every 12,000 hours, tracks replaced once in 2 decades. You could run these flat out for years. The rollers just kept spinning. Oversized radiators and a simple 3-speed power shift let the HD41B shrug off heat that boiled smaller machines dry. Hydraulics were open and accessible, every hose and valve designed for a field fix with nothing more than a pipe wrench and a can of grease. The American frame was so overbuilt that even after Fiat Allis collapsed and dealer support vanished, these dozers stayed in the dirt, rebuilt by welders, and kept alive with ingenuity. Across South America and Eastern Europe, HD41Bs from the 1990s still rip iron ore and clay, proof that pure mechanical design outlives any brand. 7 rollers, massive cooling, and a frame that refuses to quit. Still running today. Komatsu D375A5 earned its reputation in places where winter is not just a season, it is a test, rated at 525 horsepower and weighing between 117,000 and 126,000 pounds. This dozer was built to shrug off cold that would freeze the oil in lesser machines. In the Siberian coalfields, operators fired up the SA6 D11R diesel at -40 degrees Fahrenheit, relying on block heaters and heavy skirting just to keep the fuel from turning to gel. The D375A5 did not just start, it worked full shifts, blade down, pushing frozen overburden while American machines sat idling or locked up with brittle hoses. South African platinum mines picked the D375A5 for one reason. It started every morning, no matter how deep the frost or how thin the air. Mechanics praised the hydrostatic steering, no electronics to glitch, just solid Japanese design that kept the tracks moving true even when the wind howled through the pit. One operator in Yakutia, Russia logged 28 winters on the same D375A5, original frame, minimal electronics, no dealer laptop required. He said, "It is the only machine I trust when the world turns white." Endurance was not just a selling point, it was survival. These dozers proved their worth where downtime meant more than lost hours. It meant risking an entire season's output. Still running today, still too strong for anything less than the world's harshest winters. Komatsu's D475A2 didn't just add horsepower, it rewrote the rules of traction. At 781 gross horsepower and 188,495 pounds, this machine arrived in Chile's copper pits with a secret weapon, the low-sprocket K-bogie undercarriage. While most big dozers spun and slipped in the wet, sticky ore, the D475A2's K-bogie geometry locked every pound of weight into the ground. Oversized bogies flexed and hugged the uneven terrain, feeding pure torque to the track shoes. Operators in the Atacama described days when rain turned the pit into soup, and every other machine bogged down. The D475A2 floated forward, blade loaded, never breaking stride. One Chilean supervisor, Mario Castillo, watched his crew pit the D475A2 head-to-head against a brand-new D11R. Both machines lined up at altitude, blades down, ready to push the same wall of wet ore. The D11R lurched, lost bite, and spun out, while the Komatsu kept pulling, tracks biting deep, load after load. Castillo's verdict was simple: the K-bogie walks where others dig holes. That design edge wasn't just talk. K-bogie undercarriages spread the D475A2's weight so evenly that operators reported undercarriage life stretching past 50,000 hours. In Chile, Russia, and Mongolia, D475A2s from the 1990s with original engines are still pushing today. Proof that traction can be engineered, not just hoped for. Machines built to dominate, still running. If you've ever run a D475A2 or seen one outpull a cat, hit subscribe. There's more coming. Wyoming's Powder River Basin demanded more than brute force. It demanded a machine that could turn raw horsepower into profit. The Caterpillar D11R, at 229,520 pounds and 850 horsepower, became the backbone of coal production. But it was the carry-dozer variant, the D11R CD, that changed the economics of mining. Instead of just shoving material, the CD's 57 to 58 cubic yard bowl blade let operators push and carry overburden 300 feet at a time, moving 4,000 cubic yards per hour. One foreman at Black Thunder Mine called it the only dozer that could outpace the haul trucks and never stop for breath. The numbers spoke for themselves. Fleet managers logged 30% cost reductions after switching to the carry-dozer system, with trucks sidelined, fewer passes, and less fuel burned per ton. A Wyoming manager, still running late 90s units, put it simply, "Every minute the CD ran, we saved money. There isn't a machine built since that can do the same, with a wrench and a will." High drive design meant field repairs happened in hours, not days. Operators valued the mechanical controls. No computers, no diagnostics, just steel and oil and muscle. Limited production kept these machines rare, but those still in service are irreplaceable, proving that American engineering solved both the volume and the bottom line. Still running today, too strong for anything built after. Komatsu's D575A2 didn't just break records for size and horsepower. It broke the limits of what could be shipped on a highway, rail line, or even a mine road. Fully assembled, this machine tipped the scales at up to 157 tons, with a blade that swallowed 69 cubic yards in a single pass. The blade alone weighed more than a loaded dump truck, stretching over 24 feet wide and demanding its own dedicated trailer. Standard transport laws, 12-foot width and 80,000 pound axles, meant nothing to the D575A2, and every move required a full-scale operation. Disassembly wasn't optional. At mines in Australia and West Virginia, superintendents mapped out logistics like a military campaign. First, 250-ton cranes lifted the blade free. Then the tracks and K-bogie undercarriage, each segment rolled and chained for separate rail cars. The engine, a 1,150 horsepower V12, came out as its own load, followed by the cab, transmission, and split chassis. All told, the D575A2 broke down into 6 to 8 massive components, each one oversized, each one needing a specialized route and permit. One superintendent, recalling the arrival of the first D575A2 in West Virginia, described the scene. "We had 6 flat cars lined up at the siding, 3 days of crane work, and a convoy of trucks just to move the blade and the main frame. The reassembly took a week, and you needed a crew that had done it before. There wasn't a wrench in the state big enough for some of those bolts. Every delivery became a story in itself. Ocean freighters from Japan, rail to the mine, then days of synchronized crane lifts before the beast could even fire up." The D575A2's raw power began with the challenge of simply getting it to the job. No other dozer demanded this kind of respect before it ever touched the dirt. Production logs from Japanese coal pits in the early 1990s tell the story better than any sales brochure. The Komatsu D575A2, with its 1,150 horsepower V12 and a 69 cubic yard blade, moved 5,500 cubic yards of overburden every hour. Those numbers dwarfed anything else on the planet. The blade alone, at over 22,000 pounds, outweighed an entire Caterpillar D8. Operators needed special training just to handle the mass and momentum. One superintendent flipping through his shift records pointed to a week in Hokkaido. Crews ran the D575A2 12 hours straight, blade down, pushing more dirt in a single shift than some mines moved in a day. He wrote, "It took 3 men just to walk the blade around the pit. Never seen a machine eat ground like that." Every pass was a test of nerve and skill. The D575A2 did not just push, it carried, swept, and reshaped the landscape. Its blade biting deep and holding material that would bury a smaller dozer. Even seasoned operators admitted the first days at the controls felt like learning to drive all over again. Training manuals warned, never underestimate the blade's weight or swing. One slip, and you could take out a service truck parked too close. But when the production numbers came in, there was no debate. The D575A2 set records that still stand, 5,500 cubic yards per hour, logged in black and white by mine superintendents, blade weight heavier than a Cat D8, power that made every other dozer look small. 30 years on, a handful of these giants are still running, still too strong for anything built since. Today, as emissions rules and onboard computers dictate every new model, the toughest jobs still call for 1990s iron. In 2024, United States mines and Australian superpits keep D11Rs and D575A2s on the front line. Machines built when reliability was measured in decades, not diagnostics. The lesson is clear. True strength isn't just horsepower. It's how long a machine refuses to quit. Let me know which legend you trust most below.